Hello, everybody out there, and happy Saturday. This is Dr. Duncan McCollum coming to you live from KSCO Radio, the most amazing station on the planet. Anyway, so what I want to do, we're getting to 2020. It's right around the corner, and I want to really encourage you to take a look at what you can do to improve your health in the coming year. And there's so much amazing information out there right now. It just keeps coming. And, you know, I sometimes being involved with Health Centers of the Future and Dr. Dan Pompa and all of that group, it's like being hit in the face with a fire hose all the time, because just when you think you got it together, something new comes out. So what I want to talk about today is something that's really interesting. It's called senescent cells, or senescence like senile, old cells. What is a senescent cell, and how does it get that way? And then what do we do? Do we like them or not? Well, we don't. We want to get rid of them. So basically, senescent cells are old cells in your body that can no longer divide. And what they do is they cause chronic inflammation in the body and chronic disease. So, wow, if we could eliminate or eliminate these senescent cells in our body, what could that do to our health? Well, most of the disease that we get in our life is age-related. It's called age-related disease. So then these senescent cells play a huge role in that. So let me explain how we get there. So as you guys all remember from high school, you know, you put a cell in a petri dish and it will divide, something called mitosis. Don't let me get you mixed up with the words. Cells divide and they divide and they divide. When we are conceived, we become one cell. That cell divides and divides and divides till we are now 75 trillion cells. Pretty amazing. This life force is able to do that. So now a lot of the cells in our body, there's a few cells that don't, they're formed in the embryo and then they don't divide, okay? Heart cells, muscle cells and stuff very rarely do. But a lot of the supportive cells to them do divide. And every time they divide, there's this thing called a telomere on the end of your DNA. Pretty wild stuff. And telomeres are like, I don't know if you've ever been down by the pond and they have those horsetails that are very ancient. They're from prehistoric times and they're just these long reeds that you break off in pieces. Those are like telomeres. So every time your cell divides, or every time your DNA splits with a dividing cell, that telomere gets shorter, just like pulling off one of those pieces of that horsetail. There's only so many times a cell can divide in our lifetime, and that is predicted by the length of those telomeres. So the science is out. We know that when those telomeres get a certain length, the cell will no longer divide, and it becomes senescent or senile. Now, what's supposed to happen in a perfect world is that senescent cell now goes on a suicide mission, and knowing that it is no longer helpful to the organism, it emits a toxin or a signal into the rest of the body, signaling the body to go destroy that old senescent cell. So in other words, it tells the immune system, I'm done, come get me, I'm ready to be recycled. I'm going to give all of my contents back to the body so it can make a new young cell. Well, what's happened with all of the lifestyle that we have, the toxins in our environment, the toxins that we have accumulated over a lifetime, the heavy metals, mercury, lead, all these things that we do get 4 generations down through our mother's umbilical blood. So some of the stuff isn't even yours. It came down through 3 or 4 generations of mercury fillings that are 150 years old. The silver fillings are 50% mercury. Don't let anybody tell you different. That mercury gets up into your brain. It has an affinity, or it likes fat tissue. Why? Because fat hides it well. And what's your brain made of? Fat. You ever been called a fathead? Well, there you go. That's the more fat in your brain, the better off you are, right? So what happens is, as we're aging, more and more of these senescent cells reach, or our telomeres get short enough where these senescent cells are now just sitting there, not doing anything helpful for the body. They're supposed to emit this toxin so that they get killed themselves, But what happens is our immune system is not strong enough to go after and kill those senescent cells, so they just hang out and cause chronic inflammation. So now, what do we know? Chronic inflammation causes chronic disease. We've talked about that many, many times on our show. So we know that chronic or toxicity also, even without the senescent cell, toxicity in your body is going to cause chronic inflammation. Chronic inflammation causes chronic disease. Now we have this whole new animal, this senescent cell that we're talking about, and you're probably going to hear more about it, that is also adding to the chronic inflammation in our body. So the real catchphrase here is age-related disease. So we know as the bell curve goes up with our age, there's a point where our cells are getting weaker and weaker. The telomeres are getting shorter and shorter. The signals of the cells are getting weaker and weaker, and then they're not able to actually destroy themselves. They get sick. So what's really interesting is the DNA in a young cell is exactly like the DNA in an old cell. There's no difference. The difference is how it is expressed, how the genes are expressed. The genes on an old cell are expressed a lot different than the genes on a young cell. So that's what we call age-related diseases. These genes can no longer handle the toxins of the environment as well. Why would a cell in a young person that may have a gene that's a cancer-causing gene, let's say in the breast or the colon, not affect somebody when they're young, but all of a sudden, as soon as you reach 40 or 50, your chance of developing that cancer goes up. Same DNA, same cell, maybe not. The cells split, the telomeres are getting shorter, the strength and power of those cells are getting weaker and weaker. So this is a pretty interesting subject. We now know how to get rid of these senescent cells. There's a number of ways. One way, in fact, science says the only way that they know right now that your body can get rid of these senescent cells is through fasting. Interesting. Intermittent fasting and fasting that we teach. Now, we're going to be doing our workshop starting January. In fact, on January 15th at Severino's, 7 o'clock, it's a Wednesday night, we're going to be introducing how to actually start to get your body health back, how to learn how to do intermittent fasting correctly, because there's a lot of people that say, oh yeah, I do it, but they're not doing it correctly, believe me, because I know what they're doing wrong. We couple this with the ketogenic diet, and oh, I do keto. Yeah, I eat bacon every day. Yeah, great. We call that dirty keto. It's got more toxins in the bacon than you're helping yourself by getting fat in your diet. So there's certain ways to do this ketogenic diet, and we know how to do it. It's been proven. We're working with some of the top doctors on the planet, and I'm going to talk about some of that in a minute. But I just really want to get your understanding of the senescent cells, right? That they are cells that are done dividing. They should just go away and make room for new ones. So what was the breakthrough in 2016 that got us to understand that the body could break these down? Well, it came with a guy who won the Nobel Prize, Dr. Yoshinori Asuma. He won the Nobel Prize in Medicine and Physiology for the term autophagy, autophagy. That means auto, self, phagy, eat. Your body's eating itself. Well, how cool is that? Especially if you can direct your body to eat the right cells. We used to think that when you fasted or you starved, that your body would sacrifice the most healthy cells in your body. But what we know now, and of course by Dr. Yoshinori Asuma, is that your body saves the strong cells, but kills the weak cells. Weak cells can't adapt. Well, what's a senescent cell? It's a weak cell. So even though it's sitting there in your average United States diet of, unorganic bread that's toxic, inflammatory, it's got glyphosate on it, and then you're eating Cheerios for breakfast or colored fruity things for breakfast, and you're eating so many meals a day that your digestive system never gets a break, your body becomes more and more and more inflamed. So that's when these cells are not going to die, because you've got an overwhelm of of inflammation in your body is working so hard to digest all of that junk you're putting in it that has zero energy left to handle your immune system. So we know that about 65% of your body's energy goes to digest food. And if you've got diabetes, they tell you to eat 6 times a day. Well, what's that doing to allowing your body to heal itself? Nothing. They're wanting you to put in enough sugar to keep the sugar amount level in your bloodstream and kind of monitoring the insulin. You know, it's like, I don't know if you ever watched that movie Raiders of the Lost Ark. You remember? Most of you are too young to remember that. But all of a sudden they're digging for the ark, and and then that Greek guy says they're digging in the wrong place. Well, when you're talking about dealing with sugar and insulin with diabetes, you're digging in the wrong place. What you want to do is get the body not dependent on sugar, not dependent on insulin. You want to get it moving over into being able to burn ketones. What are ketones? Fat. Look around. Do you have some extra? You probably do. And if you don't, then you've got another issue we got to talk about. But we're going to assume, because we know that 50% of the adult population in this country are obese or overweight at best, we've got a lot of fuel sitting around that we gotta use up. So it's very interesting that when we're talking about inflammation in our body, we know that this sugar food we're eating, these foods that we're told to eat 6 times a day, are usually sugar producing foods. That would be anything from French fry to broccoli, and any protein. Animal protein burns as sugar. So, and if you're eating 6 times a day, you're never giving your body a chance to do anything else but put 65% of its energy to digesting that food. So when you go into intermittent fasting, and this is the science, this is what they found out. When you go into intermittent fasting, let's say you have a 8-hour eating window from lunch to dinner. So you ate dinner at 6, you sleep, you wake up, you don't eat till 12 again. That's about 16, 18 hours, don't check my math, of your body not having to worry about digesting its food. So what does it get to do? It gets to heal. What's it going to heal first? The thing that needs healing first, right? Usually it's the digestive system. Most of us, I think 95% of us, are said to have some sort of leaky gut. And we know that glyphosate is very responsible for that, along with all of the bad food that we eat, the supplements that we've taken, the drugs that we've taken, even over-the-counter drugs, all this kind of stuff. So we want to start to get the body to heal. And in order to do that, we've got to do intermittent fasting. Why are we going to do this? Let's get back to what I started this conversation with, is getting rid of the senescent cells. So if your body's working so hard to try to digest all this junk that you're putting in it, and then it's storing it in every compartment possible because it doesn't know what to do with all this sugar, you can't use it, so it's storing it in fat cells everywhere. We stop that whole program, and then we go, let's let the digestive system relax. Let's let it do what it's supposed to do, heal. Then, as we start to get the body to look for food, because it's not just this incredibly constant source of sugar coming in, it's going to have to start to figure out where to find this other fuel. This other fuel comes in a couple places. Your fat cells, that's where all your stored energy is. What happens to a bear in wintertime? He hibernates, and all that fat he's eaten gets used up as ketones, and he sleeps very well. And it's kind of interesting, when you're in ketosis, you sleep better. One of the main things we know. So the other thing is, as we are not putting all this food in our body, guess what system gets to work better? The immune system. Why aren't senescent cells broken down? Because our immune system's too weak to break them down, because it's so spread so thin, handling all the food that we eat, all the other toxins in our body, and stress of the environment. We are constantly under so much mental stress that our body is in this constant, what you call sympathetic system, looking for that tiger that isn't there. That's also another reason that our immune system gets weak. all tied back to longevity, all tied back to getting rid of the senescent cell that causes disease. Now, senescent cells do a couple things. When they can no longer divide, or because their telomeres are so short, those little antennas on the edge of the DNA are like breaking apart those horsetails, and then you don't have anything to break apart. The cell can't divide anymore. Those things are sitting around. Now, what do you do if you're sitting around with nothing to do? You look for trouble. Well, these cells look for trouble. They're either going to cause chronic disease by inflammation, or they're going to mutate, and they mutate into that really bad thing called cancer, right? Now, we know that there's 10 million cancer cells made in our body every day. As long as your body can kill 10 million cancer cells every day, you're good. When your body's so busy doing all this other stuff, and that cancer gets a hold, then you're in trouble. So, very interesting. Sugar feeds cancer. Sugar feeds inflammation. Sugar feeds disease. We're talking about age-related diseases now, okay? That's when our body gets to a certain point, we start to get all these age-related disease, heart disease, brain stroke disease, cancers, diabetes, arthritis, like whether it's joint arthritis or inflammatory arthritis. That's all age-related. In 99% of the cases, you might get some kids with these diseases. So really interesting. We're going to take a break here in a minute, but there are children that are born, and then they're born old, and then they unfortunately die at like 12 or 13 years old. Well, what science has discovered, and what's led us to this, is that they're born with very short telomeres. So their bodies, rather than having 15,000 telomeres when they're born with about 8,000, and that is about the make-break point of a cell division. So we're going to take a quick break, and then we'll be back in just a couple minutes. Okay, for those of you watching me on Facebook Live, that was my couple-minute break, and in that break, Billy's laughing over here. In that break, what I was talking about is this incredible new machine that I have called a tissue regenerative therapy machine, or a stem cell machine. Now, we're talking about, I haven't even mentioned stem cells yet, but I will. This machine is, it comes out of Germany. They've used it in Austria for 10 years, and every trauma center there, especially brain trauma, nervous system trauma, it actually can get your body to pull your own stem cells out of its tissue and out of the long bone. Let's say, and I got it because it fixed my shoulder. I couldn't get my shoulder working no matter what. I went and got one of these treatments, and within 2 treatments, it was 80% better. I went and bought one. I could have bought 2 muscle cars for it, but no. Santa Cruz needs one. In fact, there's only 3 in Northern California. There's one my friend has up in Redding. I have mine, and there's one south of here somewhere. Anyway, end of commercial. You can come in and get that for $49. A great gift to buy a friend. It's a $300 service. If you need to get somebody a Christmas present, you can buy them one of these for $49. You can get one time an introduction TRT treatment, tissue regenerative therapy treatment. Okay, end of commercial, back to what we're talking about. We're talking about longevity, how to live to be 100 and talk about it and be able to talk about it. Okay, now a lot of us go, why would I want to live to be 100? I don't want to live through all that disease. Exactly. Even if you live to be 60 or 70 or 80, do you want to have all those age-related diseases, or do you want to learn what you can do to get through them? So in January at Severino's, the 15th of January, you should call my office. This is Dr. Duncan McCollum. Call McCollum Family Chiropractic in Capitola, 831-459-9990. And you can either attend this online, or you can attend the class there. And we're going to be going over the Dr. Daniel Pompa's amazing Stenomic 7-week workshop that I did every week last year. We did 5 classes, amazing ability to understand how to do intermittent fasting correctly and how to get into ketosis correctly. Now, why? Because we want to get rid of the senescent cells. I was talking about that word by Dr. Yoshinori Asumi, who won the Nobel Prize in 2016 for the word autophagy. Now, this is really important. Autophagy. Eating your own body is what it means. But it's eating those bad, unhealthy cells, the senescent cells for one. What about the other bugs in our body? We know we're only 75 trillion cells that are human. We have 100 trillion cells that live in our gut that are bugs. And hopefully they're good bugs as opposed to bad bugs. How sick are you? Pretty much as sick as you got bad bugs in your intestines, because those are going to cause your immune system to just have to go crazy trying to fight them off. It's going to take the attention off of looking at your own cells and saying, okay, your time's up, your time's up, your time's up. It ignores these quiet little senescent cells that are kind of secretly just putting toxins out into your body that are making you sick, causing inflammation. We know again that the root cause of chronic disease is chronic inflammation. Wow, well, we've got a cell in our body, millions of them every day, that are sitting there causing inflammation. That shouldn't be doing that. We got to get rid of these guys. So if you want to learn about this intermittent fasting class, I'm telling you, this is amazing. The top scientists on the planet, and you can look this up yourself, just Google senescent cells, like senile, senescent cells and autophagy, or fasting and senescent cells. They're going to tell you that that's the one thing we know we can do to start to break down these old cells. So if you don't do it correctly, you're just going to get sick and you're going to give up. If you want to have a healthy future, then you should really learn how to do this yourself. And that's what I encourage you to do. So there's a lot of other things going on. We know, and this is something that I'll talk about more in the future. I'll be doing a show with Dr. Dan Pompa on this about how can you lengthen your telomeres? Interesting. So if we know that every time a cell divides, your telomeres get shorter and shorter and shorter, and once they get a certain age, they no longer divide, and hopefully that cell will die quickly. If it doesn't, it's causing more problem for you. What if we could figure out how to lengthen those telomeres? Would that add years to your life? Signs point to yes. If you take that, what is that, an 8-ball, and look at it, signs point to yes. If we can lengthen the telomeres, we can lengthen potentially our life. One thing we know we can do is we can make the age of the cell younger by lengthening those telomeres. And by doing that, we can put off the age-related diseases. So a lot of us are living, quote unquote, longer, but most of us don't even know what that is. The quality of our life, the Alzheimer's disease, the strokes, the heart attacks, the diabetes, the loss of limbs, eyesight, dialysis caused by age-related disease. This can actually, you can do something about this. And it's not going to be through the sickness care model. It's got to be something that you learn to do yourself, and you have to take responsibility for it because nobody else will. So my goal, and the whole goal of Health Centers of the Future, of which there are many doctors around the country and in other countries as well, our goal is to help you learn how to take your health back and your life back through giving you the education you need. I hate that word, giving you the education, helping you understand how to get your body healthy. So that's what we want to help you do. If you want to come to the workshop, you can take it online. If you live somewhere else than Santa Cruz and you want to take this class online, you'll be able to do the 7-week Stenomic workshop online, starting on the class actually starts on the 22nd of January. The introductory class will be the 15th of January. Both of those are Wednesdays. So you'll be able to get on the 7-week course by yourself and never tune into my class, my live class, or you can take it online and tune into the live class as well. I want you to get as much information as you can. So this is so amazing, the information that's coming down the pike. We also know that there's something called natural killer cells, all these different white blood cells in our body. Their job is, they're our immune response. They're supposed to go around and wipe out these senescent cells, infection, bacteria, all these different types of invaders that get into our body. They're supposed to be kept under control by our immune system and our white blood cells. And one of them is called a natural killer cell. So another thing we know is that these natural killer cells can go around and help get rid of these senescent cells. So if we can increase our natural killer cell count, would they help wipe out some of the senescent cells? The answer is yes. So we'll be going over how to do that as well. One thing you need to do is clean up your body. There's so many people that go get different types of therapies, like the magic bullet, okay? And, there's people that do this right and people that don't. But even if you get injected stem cells, if you put it into a unhealthy body, they're not going to do any good. You've got to get it into a healthy body. This is best illustrated by a gentleman named Dr. Bruce Lipton, who's the genius on cell walls, or the cell membrane. And believe me, the cell membrane, we're 75 trillion cells, the cell membrane is it. That's the brain that's the most intelligent part of our bodies, is the cell membrane. And it lets hormones in, it lets toxins out, it's selective on what it does. But when we get an inflamed environment, like a smoky environment, let's say you're driving down the road and you take your exhaust pipe, stick a hose in it, and put it in the window and roll the window up, it's going to kill you. The more our environment it affects our health, the more it affects our body, the more heavy metals we're exposed to through things like flu shots, and through our mother, through other kind of things that the medical profession is trying to push on us to say that it's going to help us, let alone the stuff we get. I just saw an article, you probably did too, the mountain lions in the hills of Santa Cruz have high mercury counts. And they say that's because of the mercury in the fog that's coming off of the coast. Well, it's also the mercury from the animals that they're eating, and that's accumulating up the line. And we know, and I went over this in a couple shows ago, one of the major causes of toxicity or anxiety, one of the major causes is mercury poisoning. It's like one or two symptoms of mercury poisoning is anxiety. Lead poisoning, anxiety, and depression. And I just saw an article today, I'll post it later, that 50 to 75% of our younger population are unable to work because of these toxins that are affecting them mentally. What do we do to these kids? We give them drugs, mind-altering drugs that are like chemical straitjackets that stop them from being creative, but maybe calm them down a little bit. Toxicity, same thing. These kids have so much things going against them. We need to wake up, and we need to take this whole situation into control by ourselves. It's up to us. If it's going to be, it's up to me, it's up to you. If you want to get your health back, start tapping into what we're teaching. The health centers of the future all over the country, we're really teaching you, giving you the information so that you can make the decisions that you may or may not want to make to get your health back. But one thing I can tell you for sure is the United States is rated 47th in the world for health. It means that countries like Cuba are healthier than us. We take 70% of all the medication made in the world, and we're only 4% of the world population. Not very good statistics. Every time you turn on the TV, there's a drug company telling you to tell your doctor that you want to try this medication. And be sure to tell your doctor you have liver problems or you're allergic to the drug. Yeah, I'm supposed to tell my doctor I'm allergic to the drug the TV is trying to tell me to take. How am I supposed to know that? So this is not the answer. So I'll give you an example. Let's say you're, for those of you watching on Facebook, I'm going to use my tie because I'm at work today. So this is what's going on. Let's say this tie is a nerve. I've got a tie around my neck and I'm holding it out straight, pretending that's a nerve coming out of my spine going to my heart. Boom, 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 boom. If I cut that nerve completely, my heart stops, right? That makes sense to you? Unplug your toaster and see if it works. Now, if I have a little pressure on that nerve, let's say 5 or 10%, do you think the heart will work right? Absolutely not. Take a dimmer switch and turn the dimmer down a little bit. The light can't be as bright as you need it to be with the dimmer switch on. So now the heart, in this case, won't work as well. So you go to the medical doctor, they go, oh, your heart's too slow. Here's a drug to speed it up. Your heart's too fast. Here's a drug to slow it down. Have they solved anything? Yeah, they've solved something with your symptoms maybe, but they haven't found the upstream cause of the problem. The upstream cause in this particular case is pressure on the nerve. Until you take the pressure off the nerve, the body's not going to get well. Same thing goes with chemical-induced diseases. Now, what do I mean by chemical? Toxins, lead, mercury, glyphosate, chemicals that are around your house, Raid that's under your sink, chlorine that you're using, deodorant that's got stuff in it, things you put on our hair, antiperspirant soap, all this stuff, things that you put on your skin are filled with toxins. The FDA has absolutely zero regulation with anything you put on your skin. I'm going to misquote the number, but the average female in this country, and it's probably not true in Santa Cruz, but the average female in this country puts enough stuff on their body that they get something like 1,500 chemicals put on their skin every day. Now, I'm probably wrong on that, but it's really high. Now, the biggest organ in your body is your skin. The FDA's approach is, well, since you're putting it on your skin, you're not consuming it, so it's not a big deal. But what are you seeing advertised on TV now? There's a little patch you can put on your arm to induce insulin into your body so you don't have to get injections. You mean that insulin's going right through my skin into my bloodstream? So there's a lot of things that we put on our body that gets into our blood through our skin. So how is it okay to put those 1,500 or 15,000, whatever the number is, somebody post it if they want to, different chemicals on our body? Those chemicals get sucked into the body through the pores of our skin. Then they're going to be floating around in our body. Well, it's somebody's job to get those out of there. It's either your liver or your kidney, with the major filters in our body, are supposed to get those toxins out of our bloodstream. You're probably turning your heater on this time of year. Have you opened up and looked at the filter? You better do that because it's probably black, right? With all kinds of stuff plugging up those holes. So clean your filter, okay, because that's really important for your health too, because of all the junk in your house. But your liver is a filter, and if it doesn't get cleaned, if it is continually bombarded with pretty toxic, caustic chemicals from our environment, pretty soon it's going to get overwhelmed. So now, rather than having clean blood come out of your liver, it's still circulating unhealthy blood. That unhealthy, toxic blood is getting splashed up against cells. Those cell walls that Dr. Bruce Lipton was talking about, that are so smart, that let hormones in at the right time, vitamins and minerals in, toxins out, substances out, they start to get plugged up, just like your filter in your house. When they get plugged up, the cells can't think right, they can't work right, hormones can't get in there. So check this out. What is the problem with diabetes? Insulin resistance. What's that mean? Insulin resistance. It means insulin can't get into the cell. Okay, so what do? You just keep putting more and more insulin in there till the concentration's so hard that it gets shoved in there? We could do that. Now, what happens when you do that? You get too much insulin in your blood. What's diabetes type 3 called right now? Alzheimer's disease. So diabetes means you've got to use too much insulin, hyperinsulinemia. Not only is it not solving a problem, but it's like the American way: get a bigger hammer and keep trying to shove that insulin into the cell to keep the sugar level where it's supposed to be in your blood. Now that is creating so many other problems upstream into your brain. It's causing the plaque to be laid down in your brain. It's just like the plaque that you might get on the back of your teeth. That stuff can't conduct electricity, so you start to not be able to have thoughts go through synapses, and then you've got problems like senile dementia. What is that? Age-related disease, okay? Age-related, monitored by how toxic your body is. So one thing you can do to alter that age-related disease is become less toxic, okay? And by doing that, you're going to allow your cells to not to have to divide as quickly because they're lasting longer, which is going to keep your telomeres longer, which means the cells are going to last longer, which means you're going to not be as susceptible to age-related diseases like heart attack, stroke, diabetes, arthritis, and all these other things. Parkinson's disease, which, by the way, is a toxic-related disease. And why is it an older age-related disease? Because you have to build up enough toxins. The immune system has to get weak enough. Your filtering systems, like your liver and kidney, have to get weak enough that it can't dump the junk out of your body. And then you end up with some kind of disease. So we're going to take another break here, and I'll be back in just a minute. Okay, well, the people on the radio are listening to me talk about my tissue regenerative therapy machine. And this is an amazing machine that comes from Germany. And it actually, what it does is when you put it on an area that might have some damaged tissue, they use this with some of the major sports teams. Like, they don't even know they have a shoulder problem yet, but you use this tissue regenerative therapy, which is a sound machine, over your arm. And all of a sudden you go, wow, what's that? Why is that painful there? Well, what we know is all of us have got injuries to our shoulders, joints, things like that. And muscles become tendons where they attach to bone. Like if you put your hand on your shoulder and run it down the outside before your elbow, there's a bump there. That's muscle. Okay, that's where all of the muscles attach coming off your shoulder. Now, every time you overuse it, it tears a little bit of that tendon there. And then it starts to heal. Pretty soon your body forgets about it, so you have this old scar tissue there, right? Over a period of time, it gets weaker and weaker and weaker because the body's got a lot of other important things to do, like try to keep you from being inflamed and fight off your immune system that it can't even do very well anymore, or your immune system fight off problems. It forgets about it. The tissue regenerative therapy machine is so awesome because what it does is it ends up simulating a new injury over the area that we find based on it detecting a bad part of your body. It detects it. Now, once it detects it, it will actually simulate an old injury or a new injury. So what happens, it's like if you ever scraped your elbow and then you see that kind of sticky stuff that comes on your elbow after a while, that's your body, the cell walls emitting a substance that ends up being an RNA messenger that goes up to the brain and going, hey, there's a new injury, I'm going to bleed to death unless you fix it. So your body sends this cascade of stuff down to plug that hole and to put in tissue repair. So the tissue regenerative therapy machine, what it does is it sends a signal to the brain if you're doing, let's say, a shoulder or a knee or a hip. And it now, what we know is that anytime you have an injury, your body recruits stem cells. Wow, that's a cool word. Stem cells to go to that area and start to heal it. And those stem cells can become anything. They can become a toenail, they can become a finger, a liver, a kidney. They're called undifferentiated because it's just like an egg and the sperm come together. It's perfect stem cell. That thing turns into 75 trillion cells in 9 months, and here we are. Okay, we got an eye, an ear, a foot. So those stem cells get recruited to that area that we just re-stimulated with the TRT machine, the tissue regenerative therapy machine. Those stem cells can go and become new muscle cells, new ligament cells. They actually also start to regenerate new blood vessels. It's called angiogenesis. It will stimulate new blood vessels in there. So I have an offer. Anybody who wants to do this, you can buy one for $49. It's a $300 special. If you're looking for a Christmas gift for somebody that you know that needs it, come buy them a $49 special TRT treatment in my office. McCollum Family Chiropractic, 831-459-9990. And if for some reason we take a look at that individual and go, this isn't for you, we can't do this on you for whatever reason, we'll refund the money. So, you get your 49 bucks back. But there's very few incidences where we wouldn't be able to do it. And but I just want to let you know that if we can't, we're gonna return that money. Okay, back to the show. Now, I know that you guys on my Saturday show actually heard my commercial, and you heard a couple different people on the show talk about the results. And I'd love that to be for you too. Okay, so getting back to the senescent cell, that is like the most amazing thing to me. The senescent cell, the old senile cells that are sitting around in our body doing nothing but causing trouble. How do we get rid of them? Well, again, for anybody that just tuned in, we know we can get rid of them, or a lot of them, by doing fasting. Why? Because fasting it's an amazing process that actually give your body a break. So you might eat 2 meals a day and give it 16 hours where it's not having to digest food. Your body starts to repair itself, but also it frees up your immune system to go around and look for these signals that the senescent cells are sending out. So if you just tuned in, when your body's the cells can't divide anymore because of these telomeres are too short, these cells now just sit there causing troubles. They're troublemakers. They cause inflammation. They try to do the right thing. They try to call to the brain, hey, I can't divide anymore. I'm no longer helpful. Somebody please come chew me up. But our bodies get so involved with all these other toxins, this environmental toxins, the lead, the mercury, the chemicals, the glyphosate, stress, all those things that are going to allow that senescent cell to sit there. But it's trying to do the right thing. So it keeps putting out this inflammatory response saying, come get me. Pretty soon it's not heard. Those substances that it's putting out start to affect the adjacent cells. So all of a sudden, this one senescent cell putting out these chemicals is causing an aberration of the cells next to it and next to it and next to it. And then you get a big problem in an area. Now, every cell, all these cells have DNA in it. They all have genes in it. Healthy genes are going to keep you healthy, right? But when these cells get toxic, the genes start to mutate, and those mutations can cause age-related diseases, Alzheimer's disease, heart disease, stroke, diabetes, arthritis. All these things are age-related diseases, and we know that the senescent cells are very, very responsible for this. We also know that these things, and if you're just tuning in, go back and listen to about these little antennas on the end of our DNA called telomeres. And I love the example of those horsetails I used to get down by the creek, and I'd pull them off a bit by bit. That would be like your telomere shortening. At one point, your telomeres are so short the cells can't divide anymore. The cell's supposed to die and be recycled. Take it down to gray bears and take every vitamin, mineral part out of it and make a new cell out of it. Our bodies aren't doing that. That's why we have the disease that we have. Our country, we don't grow old and die gracefully. We grow old and we die of disease these days. Very few of us die like my father did. 91 years old, healthy till about 2 weeks before he died. His body failed on him and he died. Now, most of the people go through this process of one disease after the other, one medication on top of the other, infirmaries, the children have to get involved, and it's just devastating. Do you know that 78% of all bankruptcies in this country, 78% of all bankruptcies in this country are caused by medical-related diseases? And 80% of those 78% of bankruptcies, 80% of them have health insurance. So you have health insurance, but you're still going to go bankrupt. So why are you even worrying about who's going to cover what medical care? It's all sickness care. If you want to get healthy, quit worrying about somebody else taking care of your health. Start to do it yourself. You can come to my workshop. It's going to be the 15th of January at Severino, 7 o'clock. Call my office, McCollum Family Chiropractic, 831-459-9990. and let me know. Call my staff and tell them I want to come. Come check it out. We're going to be teaching so much for you to learn how to reverse the age clock. Start to take your genetic age and reverse it by taking the pressure off your spine. Of course, that's important. Get the pressure off and the toxins out of your body so the cells that you do have aren't going to have to die so quickly. And actually show you systems that you can do to slow down cell death. And again, if you look up, one of the only ways that we know that we can lengthen telomeres naturally is through autophagy, and autophagy means fasting. Because when your body breaks down old senile cells through the process called autophagy that Dr. Yoshinori Yatsumi, the one who won the Nobel Prize in 2016, talked about, then your body's going to have to pull stem cells out of your long bone to replace those old cells. So those new stem cells are going to replicate and replicate. Well, they're younger. So those stem cells have longer telomeres than the ones of the old senile cells that are dying. So now I'm going to be this year working with Dr. Pompa, talking about actually things that we can do to actually increase the length of our telomeres. There's some studies going on right now that will blow your mind. And I can't really talk about them quite yet, but you should know that they're pretty amazing. So I want to really encourage you to make 2020 the best year ever. And, I am stealing that phrase from a friend of mine, Dr. David Avocado Wolf. I did an interview with him a while back. We talked about doing another one in January. I'm going to try to get him in January and February. We talked about the colors of foods. What foods help what part of your body? Because it's not just about getting the toxicity out of your body, by not eating. But of course, we got to get the heavy metal out. We've got to stop eating inflammatory foods. We've got to teach you how to fast so that you can break down the old senescent senile cells in your body. But we also got to make sure that you're putting in healthy foods. And David Avocado Wolf is the expert on that. But one thing that I love about him, there are many, is he came up with the phrase, "Today's the best day ever," followed by the best day ever. So why not? 2020 is going to be the best year for you if you decide it's going to be that way. And you can start by attending my workshop at Severino's. It's going to be Wednesday night, the 15th, from 7 to 8 o'clock. And we're going to be going over how you can get your body to become younger, how you can start to turn back your genetic age. And we know that this is possible. Now, first and foremost, the first thing we might have to do is stop you from being so inflamed. And we're going to teach you that just by changing the foods you eat. Then we're going to teach you how to start to maybe learn how to not eat 6 or 7 meals a day. We're going to do this in a way that your body can have it. Your body's actually going to come back alive and it's going to feel better. We are told if you have any kind of problems with blood sugar to eat a bunch of little meals a day. Well, you're not solving anything. What we need to do is teach you to actually use the other fuel that you are carrying enough around to last you a lifetime probably, and that's called ketones, and ketones are your fat cells. And they burn very efficiently. They burn like a gas stove. You turn it on, it goes poof, and it burns nice and perfect. You don't even need a chimney. But when you burn any other fuel than fat, any other fuel than healthy ketones, then it burns like a smoky fireplace. And if you don't close the the front, and if you don't keep the flue open, all that toxic smoke's going to come back into your house and it's going to choke you. And if you leave it going too long, it will kill you. And that's what's killing us, is the toxic foods we're eating, the toxic substances that we're getting, the heavy metals, the glyphosate, the medications, the chemicals that we get in the stuff we put on our body and in our body, dry cleaning that we get that's toxic. Those little smelly things that you put in your car, get those out of there. They're just chemicals, and they're going to get in and affect your brain, because that's where they go up into this part of your brain. So you got to get that stuff out of your life. You got to start to clean up the toxicity in your life. So I am so happy to be talking to you guys. I'm getting a peace sign from Billy, which means I got 2 minutes left. And this has been a great run. And 2020, gosh, just stay tuned. Tune in next week. This year is going to be amazing. I'm going to be working with Dr. Pompey even closer now and talking about longevity, how to live 100 years and be able to talk about it and teach your body or teach your friends about it and your family and still be able to enjoy yourself. So anyhow, thank you very much. Thanks for tuning in, everybody, and we will see you in the funny papers. All right, have a great day.